totally emotionally prepared for this. This is great.
It's amazing. Just throw you right in. It's like improv. So James McArthur. He will be talking about selling by design, and he is working for revenue marketing and sales lead at Live Planet VR.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything you want to say before you start giving your talk?
No, might as well just jump in.
Cool. All right. Get in there.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Cool.
Wet.
Yeah, it's terrible outside. Welcome to spring. All right. So as you mentioned, my name is James McArthur. I am the revenue marketing and sales lead for Live Planet VR. I have been in startups for my entire career. So that encompasses working very early on at MakerBot and then spending the next 5 years in 3D printing in a whole bunch of failed things, while also working on kind of teaching and helping entrepreneurs figure out where they're going to end up. To that end, I'm the entrepreneur in residence at Pratt Institute, as well as the host of a web series called Tinkereng, which is now part of the Advantage Business Network. So, without further ado, my topic is selling by design. How to make products that don't suck the life out of you and your customers. Why do I say that? Because you can design a product that's amazing. You can design a product that works perfectly for you. But do you know what happens when that product doesn't sell? Even the best product in the world, do you know what happens when it doesn't sell? Your salespeople come to you and they're like, hey, I need this feature, this feature, this feature from a customer. Or your boss goes, hey, we designed this, why didn't we design this into it? And what ends up happening is the entire organization, and I've been there a bunch of times, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in this talk. What ends up happening is the entire organization goes into a spiral where everyone starts blaming everyone for everything. How many people have been through that? Right. Hopefully, I can get us somewhere to where that doesn't happen. So, are you going to go through? There we go. So, with technology, the way things have gone for the last 5 years, we can, and I very much planned to be the last speaker when I wrote this, but building a product is easier than it ever has been before. And to that end, does anybody know how many blockchain startups there currently are active on AngelList? 3,073 as of this morning. Anybody want to guess how many VR startups there are? 2,048. 3D printing, not the easiest thing to build for. Guess how many? 845. So, whether your product is physical or digital, creating a prototype is super easy. There are tools, one of which you will learn about later, that make prototyping a snap. Now, I've tried to start a few of these companies. I know people that here in Williamsburg that run a shop where you can get any engineering. If you're designing anything for engineering, they work with Siemens, they work with a number of different companies to create anything, and they'll 3D print it for you. And you can just put it through their website and immediately get back a prototype or a cost, and then a prototype within 3 days. Physical prototype for your design. It's called Voodoo Manufacturing. It's awesome. But failure in this environment isn't unusual. With over 3,000 blockchain startups, how many of them do you think are going to succeed? Yeah. There are generally 2 to 3 winners in any market. The whole idea of first mover's advantage is very real, but the other idea is making products that work, because failure is not unusual, it's expected. You go get venture funding for your next startup. Guess what? They expect 80% of the companies they fund to fail. In fact, they want you to. Because when you fail, they get to go to their investors and say, look, we recoup these costs from X deal we made on the property from this. We got the IP off of these 5 startups that we funded. We got the IP from these 10 startups. And now we have a portfolio that we can build into the startup that was successful, and that's increased our valuation by $150 million. But what you can do is you can create a great product. Like this. This was a fantastic product. Has anybody heard of the Ray Super Remote? There's a reason. The Ray Super Remote was the end to universal remotes. It is the last universal remote you would ever need in your house. After a number of years, over $12 million in development, the Ray Super Remote was released to over 1,000 customers. Everyone who used it said it was great. But does 1,000 customers pay for the development, a $12 million development of a remote control? No. Within 8 months of that company starting, it folded. Great product, worked beautifully. They didn't ask their customers what they wanted to buy. Who's heard of MakerBot? MakerBot. Great company. By great, I mean they grew really quickly. And I was there. And we had product after product, which failed over 75% of the time. And what ended up happening was valuation spiked, sold for $400 million. It was supposed to be 603, but that didn't happen. The company today is worth less than $50 million. And that's with over $100 million sunk into it. FormTap, my personal favorite, because it was mine from the beginning. After hundreds of user interviews, this company was launched to zero acclaim from anyone. We had a total of 2 sales, one of which was my mom. And it was me and 2 professional product designers with a combined over 250 patents to their names. These are people who have seen success, who have sold millions of products. And we failed as miserably as you can. So how do you fix it? How do you, as product designers, as people who build things for a living, how do you fix this problem? It's not by trying to solve the problems you think your customers are going to have. It's not by solving the problems. User interviews are great, except a lot of times when you have user interviews, it's about the interface of the product, right? It's about how would they use a product. That doesn't necessarily get you a customer. That's saying, if I were to use this product, I would do this. Don't try to solve the problems you think your customers are going to have. Go out and find your customers. Keshin knows this because I have told her this at least 100 times. Go out and find your first 100 customers. I don't mean go out and sell. I don't mean become a salesperson. I mean when you're going out and you're talking, having these user interviews, just ask them simple question. What would you want to buy? What would you do? Has anybody heard of what the founder of Home Depot said his first day on the floor? He walked up there, held up a hammer to everyone, and said, "What is this?" Everyone working there that day. What is this? Everybody there was like, "It's a hammer. Don't be daft." He goes, "No, this is a porch. This is a kid's playset. This is a picture on a wall." You're not actually selling your product. You're selling what they're going to do with it. So, okay. That's why you should ignore the product specs when you're talking, when you're asking these questions. Get a feel for it. Put yourself in the idea. When you go out and you buy a product, how often are you buying it on spec? Probably only when you go buy a computer, right? And even then, most of the time it's, I'm just going to get a Mac. So ignore the specs. Ask them, what would they do? Ask them about their circumstances. Ask them about their life. Ask them about the problems they're having. Don't ask them about their whole life. Don't be like, hey, what's the dating scene like in Albuquerque? Go ask them about how their life as it relates to the product. Not the product, just around. Okay, you're building a drill. You're making a drill. You're making an app that helps connect people to drills around the city. I don't know why you do it, but you might. What do? Do you ask somebody, okay, what do you do to find a drill? No. What do you, tell me about home improvement for you. Tell me about your experiences in your own home. What happens when something goes wrong in your kitchen? What happens when something goes wrong in your living room? What do you do? Most of the time the person's going to go, I'm going to reach for my drill and I'm going to try to fix it. Well, that's a point where you say, why do you need a drill? And then they're going to say, because I have this at home, this breaks, this breaks, this breaks. And then it turns out, okay, how many people have that problem? What are their similarities? You can then go and say, establish that base market. And then you can go to your salespeople when you've gotten your product done, when you're going through the demos at the end, showing them how the damn thing works, and say, and by the way, this will work in these markets. These are the uses people will find for it. Because I can tell you, as somebody who's been in sales, who's been in marketing, that makes a world of difference. When the product people, when the design people can come, and when they come into that first training session, and they say, these are the people who are going to end up using this product, my life is infinitely easier. I just go find them and sell. And then you know who's happy? Literally everyone in your company. It's really easy to make a product your customers want to buy. It's really, really easy. And most of the time, it's a half step away. For example, camera company I know of developed an amazing camera. The problem is, one of the eyes is slightly below spec to the rest of the industry. Camera's revolutionary. But unfortunately, because that eye is slightly below spec, i.e. most cameras are doing 4K by 4K, this one's 4K by 2K, a lot of people won't buy it on spec. Had there been a simple conversation about it, that wouldn't be an issue. You can solve that with just a question. Now, who's done it right? How many people here are familiar with Nest? How many people own a Nest? It's New York, so most people don't own a home, which means you're not going to invest in the Nest. So, when the Nest founders set out to build the Nest, they just went to build a thermostat. They didn't think about what are the fancy things they could do. They just said, thermostats are old, thermostats suck, let's build a new one. They did interviews, they figured out from all of their friends that to a person who owned a home, a Nest thermostat would be an investment that they would make. Because when you spend $200,000 on a house, $250 isn't that bad. When you spend, if you're in New York, you spend $800,000 on a house, $250 really isn't that bad. Formlabs. And you'll notice these are all somewhat related to the failure cases. Formlabs started in 2011. They focused specifically, after interviews, the founders realized this was an engineering product. This would never be a consumer product. So they went out, and they've had 7 years of straight growth. Now they've just gotten a $30 million round of Series C funding to expand into China. They are worth 20 times what MakerBot is now for a simple fact that they thought ahead and were like, what are my customers actually going to buy? And it was their product team that was thinking ahead. It was the people who were developing the product on the ground. It wasn't the sales team. Their head of sales was the original product's designer. T-Public. I love this company. I used to work there, but it's great. Founded because they realized that technology was changing. It's actually the exact same business model as FormTap was, except for t-shirts. They've sold for $41 million in late 2018, and they were founded because the two co-founders went out and said, what are people likely to buy? And what are people likely to buy? Are you likely to go out and buy a t-shirt with nothing on it? Or would you like to buy Make America Groot Again? For a lot of people, it's Make America Groot Again. For me, it's whatever I'm wearing now. I don't actually know. It's something. It's a T-Public shirt too. So it's like they understood their market and they went for it. The designers are their community. The designers are their market. So it's asking the questions, figuring out what people want to buy, build what they want to buy, design what they want to buy. Because if you're designing what you think people want to buy, that's a lot harder to get right than if you just ask them. All right, thank you guys.